What unfolds when a loudmouth retiree's bravado slams into a quiet titan's grit? In one unforgettable night, a North Carolina town learned that respect isn't a viral rant. It's a metal forged in life's toughest fires. The October sun sank behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, draping Asheville, North Carolina, in a soft purple dusk that softened the jagged peaks looming over the city. Downtown hummed with a mellow rhythm, old Chevy trucks rumbling down Patton Avenue, their beds piled with firewood or flea market finds, while locals shuffled between craft breweries and quirky shops peddling tie-dye teas and handmade dulcimers. Tucked off the main drag, where the glow of streetlights faded into shadow, stood the Blue Ridge Tavern, a weathered bar that had been pouring drafts since the days of the Great Smoky Railroad. Its clapboard exterior sagged under years of mountain rain, the open sign flickering like a tired firefly. Inside, the air was heavy with the bite of spilled ale, the savory waft of smoked ribs from a pit out back, and the faint twang of a jukebox spinning Hank Williams' "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry." The tavern was a sanctuary for Asheville's over 50 crowd, retirees and faded flannel nursing PBRs, their hands rough from decades on factory lines or forest trails, swapping yarns about arthritis and grandkids over scuffed oak tables. The walls bore the marks of time, sepia photos of loggers and moonshiners, a dartboard pocked from shaky tosses, and a chalkboard listing the night's special: chicken and dumplings, $8.75. A small TV flickered above the bar, muted on a news clip about Medicare costs soaring, a sore spot buzzing online, stirring grumbles among the gray-haired patrons sipping their drinks. Tonight, though, the usual peace was unraveling. The regulars had been elbowed aside by a rowdier bunch, drawn by Preston Press Hargrove, a 69-year-old retiree turned self-proclaimed silver influencer, whose fiery online tirades about government handouts and lazy younger generations had struck a chord with the over 50 set. The bar swelled beyond its typical handful of souls to a packed house, retirees clutching phones to livestream Press's latest sermon, their faces glowing with screen light as they nodded to his booming voice. Outside, a few stragglers lingered by the door, peering through foggy windows, lured by whispers of a big night. This wasn't just a barstool chat, it was a showdown primed to erupt. Hey, if Press's clash gets your blood pumping, stick with us. This tale's got grit worth sharing. Subscribe to Lively Stories and tap that bell for more real-life yarns that hit home for folks like us. Preston Press Hargrove perched on a stool near the jukebox, his stocky frame hunched forward under a crisp polo shirt sporting his Silver Maverick logo, a cartoon wolf gripping a walking stick. At 69, he was a broad man with a shock of white hair combed back like a TV evangelist, his ruddy face creased from years of sun and bourbon. His hazel eyes gleamed with a smug spark, and his voice, gruff from decades barking at lumber crews, thundered over the bar's chatter, sharpened by months of video rants that had built a following among the AARP crowd. Press had turned his retirement from an Asheville sawmill into a late-life gig, dishing out takes on rising healthcare costs and kids who'd rather vape than work, while hawking branded mugs and ball caps. To him, the Blue Ridge Tavern was his pulpit, and every gray head in the room was a soldier in his cause. At the bar's far end, nursing a glass of Maker's Mark, sat Wade Buck Callahan, a man who didn't fit Press's fan club. At 73, Buck was a lean figure with a face carved by wind and labor, deep lines framing steel blue eyes that held a quiet intensity. His faded denim jacket hung loose over a plain gray tee, jeans patched at the knees from years on construction sites or mountain trails. His hands, thick and scarred, gripped the glass with a steadiness that spoke of a life spent taming tougher things than whiskey. Buck's thinning silver hair was tucked under a worn Stetson, and when he spoke, his low Carolina drawl sliced through noise like a saw through pine. To Press's crowd, he was just another old coot, a barfly sipping his drink in a sea of hype. They had no clue who they were up against. The spark flared when Press's hazel eyes locked onto Buck, a lone wolf in his pack of cheering retirees. Press had been mid-rant, pacing near the jukebox with a wireless mic he'd brought for his livestream. A hot topic about Medicare scams and Gen Z freeloaders, trending as he fired up the crowd. Phones glowed like lanterns, posts flying. Press is preaching truth. Silver Mavericks, unite! But Buck didn't clap, didn't nod, didn't even glance up. He just sat there sipping his makers, staring at the bar top like Press's circus was static on a dead channel. That was a cardinal sin in Press's world. Ignoring the prophet was a direct hit to his pride. Press stormed over, mic in hand, his boots thudding on the hardwood floor. The crowd hushed, sensing blood, their phones swiveling to catch the drama. "Hey, Pops!" Press roared, voice blasting through the speakers. "Are you asleep or just too broke to give a damn? This ain't the bingo hall!" Laughter erupted, rough and loud, rattling the bar's rafters. Press's posse, 4 buddies in matching Silver Maverick caps, hooted one of them, Ron Tate, a wiry ex-trucker with a gray goatee yelling, "Wake him up, Prez!" The fans ate it up, comments surging online. "LOL Grandpa's toast!" Press is savage. Buck didn't flinch. He turned his head slowly, steel blue eyes locking onto Press's with a calm that felt like a storm brewing. "Got better things to hear than a windbag," he said, his drawl cutting through the noise like a blade. The crowd gasped, a few oohs slicing the air. Press's grin faltered, then stretched into a predator's sneer. He stepped closer, mic dangling, his shadow falling over Buck's stool. "A windbag, huh? That's rich from a guy who looks like he sleeps in a shed. What's your story, old-timer? Here to scrounge a free shot?" More laughter, sharper now, the bar trembling with it. Ron zoomed in with his phone, smirking. Buck set his glass down, the clink deliberate, and leaned back on his stool, arms crossing over his lean chest. "Been in rougher patches than this," he said, voice steady as bedrock. "You wouldn't last 5 minutes in 'em." Press laughed, a booming, mocking roar, tossing his head back for the cameras. "Oh, I'm quaking. Let me guess. Some busted trailer or a cow field? Wake up, Pops. This is 2025. I'm the voice of our time, not your worn-out boots." The fans cheered, fists pumping, but a few regulars, old loggers in Carhartt jackets, shifted uneasily, their eyes narrowing at Prez. Buck's jaw clenched, but he didn't rise. "World's bigger than your videos, fella," he said, slow and deliberate. "You'll see that." Press's face darkened, his ego bruised. He leaned in, mic inches from Buck's face, voice dripping with venom. "See what? That I've got thousands of fans and you've got, what? A bar tab and a bad back? You're a nobody, man, a zero. I could buy this dive and toss you out with one rant." The crowd hushed, tension coiling like a mountain snake. Buck's eyes glinted, a tempest brewing behind his calm. "Money's loud," he said, pausing to let it land. "But it doesn't make you worth spit." Gasps punctured the silence, phones trembling in eager hands. Press's crew jeered, but the regulars growled, one muttering, "Punk's got no clue." Press's face flushed crimson, his cool shattering. "Worth spit? I'm the king here. I'm the future. You're just a relic waiting to drop." Buck stood then, slow and deliberate, his 6 feet 2 inches frame towering over Press's stocky build. The bar went dead quiet, the jukebox clicking off mid-verse. "Keep bellowing," Buck said, his drawl a low thunder. "But you're digging a pit you can't climb out of." Press smirked, stepping back to play the crowd. "A pit? Nah, I'm burying you, Pops. Let's see how tough you are when I..." He snatched a bourbon bottle from a nearby table, smashing it against the edge in a spray of glass and amber liquid. The crowd yelped, stumbling back as he waved the jagged neck like a shank. "Come on, tough guy, show me what you got." The bartender, a burly man named Travis, shouted, "Cut it out, Prez!" But Press ignored him, advancing on Buck. Ron cackled, filming tight. "This is gold. Gonna blow up online." Buck didn't budge, his hands loose at his sides, eyes locked on Press's. "You sure you want to roll them dice, son?" he asked, voice dropping to a growl that sent chills through the room. Press lunged, bottle raised, but before he could strike, a new voice boomed from the tavern's door. "Drop it, Hargrove!" The crowd spun to see Sheriff Lila Lee Morrow, a wiry woman in her late 60s, storming in with 2 deputies. Her weathered face was set hard under a wide-brimmed hat, her badge gleaming in the dim light. She'd been Asheville's law for decades, a no-nonsense figure known for taming bar brawls and busting stills with equal grit. Prez froze, bottle midair, his bravado wilting. "Sheriff? What the hell?" Lee marched forward, boots pounding hardwood, her deputies fanning out. "You're done, Hargrove. Put it down, or you're leaving in cuffs." The crowd parted, phones still rolling, as Travis stepped up. "He's been a jackass all night, Sheriff. Threatening Buck here." Lee's eyes flicked to Buck, a spark of recognition softening her glare. "Buck Callahan doesn't need me to fight his fights. But you, Press, you just picked the wrong man to mess with." Press's sneer flickered, shaky but defiant. "You can't touch me. I'm Preston Hargrove. Silver influencer, big shot. This is my turf." Lee smirked, hand on her holster. "Turf's mine, hotshot. Drop it or you're trending for a mugshot." The tension was a live wire, sparking and ready to blow. Press's hands shook, his empire of online fame teetering on the edge. Buck stood still, a rock in the storm, waiting for the blowhard to make his move. The Blue Ridge Tavern was a pressure cooker ready to blow, the air thick with the tang of spilled bourbon and the buzz of stunned voices. Sheriff Lila Lee Morrow stood firm at the entrance, her deputies flanking her like sentinels, their hands hovering near holsters. The crowd, retirees clutching phones, their faces lit by screens, froze mid-breath, caught between Press Hargrove's wild rant and Buck Callahan's unyielding calm. Press stood in the center of the chaos, his white hair wild, the jagged bourbon bottle trembling in his grip. His hazel eyes blazed with fury, locked on Buck, who hadn't flinched, his steel blue gaze steady as granite. "Back off, Sheriff," Press barked, his voice cracking over the mic still dangling from his other hand. "This ain't your fight. I'm teaching this nobody a lesson." Lee's smirk tightened, her boots thudding a step closer. "Lesson's over, Hargrove. Drop that bottle or I'll make it my fight real quick." The crowd shifted, a murmur rippling through, some eager for Press to swing, others eyeing Buck with growing unease. Press's posse, led by Ron Tate, huddled near the jukebox, phones still rolling, their cheers faltering as Lee's presence loomed. Ron muttered to the group, "He's got this. Press don't back down." But his voice wavered, the bravado thinning. Press waved the bottle higher, his chest heaving. "You think you scare me, Morrow? I've got fans, thousands of them. They'll bury you in this hillbilly bar in one night." Buck tilted his head, a faint twitch at his lips. "Fans don't mean squat when you're this deep in the hole, son." The crowd gasped, a few regulars, old loggers and mill hands, nodding grimly, their respect for Buck's calm growing. Press's face twisted, his ego a raw nerve. "Deep in the hole? I'm the king here, you washed-up relic. I've got money power, everything you'll never touch." Lee took another step, her hand brushing her holster. "Money don't buy you out of this, Hargrove. Put it down, now." Press spun on her, bottle slashing the air. "Stay out of it, Sheriff. This is between me and him. He's been begging for it all night." He turned back to Buck, leaning in close, the jagged glass inches from Buck's chest. "You want to play tough? Let's see how tough you are when I carve you up." The crowd recoiled, a woman yelping as she stumbled into a table. Travis, the bartender, lunged forward, his burly frame tense. "Prez, you're out of line. Stop this." But Prez shoved him back, the bottle slashing wildly. Buck didn't move, his hands still loose at his sides, his voice a low growl. "You're making a fool of yourself, Hargrove. Put it down before you can't." Press laughed, a harsh, unhinged sound, his eyes wild. "A fool? I'm a legend. This bar's mine. This town's mine. You're nothing. Just a broke old man who don't know his place." He jabbed the bottle closer, the glass glinting under the tavern's dim lights. "I'll show you what happens when you cross me." The tension snapped taut, the room a live wire. The regulars edged back, their grumbles turning to shouts. "Back off, Press! Leave him be!" While Preece's crew egged him on, Ron yelling, "Finish him, Prez! Show the world!" The live stream surged, comments flooding about silver influencer gone wild and boomer brawl, the online buzz amplifying the chaos. Lee's voice cut through, sharp as a whip. "Last chance, Hargrove. Drop it or you're done. Press whirled on her, bottle raised, his face a mask of rage. Done? I'm Preston Hargrove. I don't bow to nobody, especially not some badge and a has-been. He spun back to Buck, his arm rearing for a strike. Say goodnight, Pops, the crowd screamed, chairs toppling as folks scrambled. Buck's calm cracked, a flicker of steel in his eyes. But before Prez could swing, Lee barked, Now! Her deputies surged forward, one tackling Ron to the floor, his phone skittering across the hardwood. The other grabbed Press's arm, but Press thrashed, wrenching free, the bottle slashing toward Buck. Buck moved then, swift as a mountain cat. He sidestepped, grabbed Press's wrist, and twisted it hard, forcing the bottle to clatter to the floor in a spray of glass. Press yelped, stumbling back. But Buck didn't let go. He pinned Press's arm behind him, slamming him chest first against the bar. The crowd gasped, a collective jolt as Press's mic hit the ground, feedback screeching through the speakers. Enough, Lee roared, her Glock drawn now, aimed square at Press. You're under arrest, Hargrove. Assault, threats, the works. Press thrashed, his face red, spit flying. Let me go, you bastard. I'm a star. You can't do this. Buck held firm, his voice low in Press's ear. Stars falling fast, son. Should have quit while you could. The deputies swarmed, one cuffing Ron as he cursed from the floor, the other yanking Press from Buck's grip, snapping cuffs on his wrists. Press screamed, This is a setup. My fans will ruin you all. His posse shrank back, their bravado gone, phones dropping as the reality sank in. Lee holstered her gun, nodding at Buck. You good? Buck brushed glass off his sleeve, his calm returning. Been better, Lee. The crowd buzzed, a mix of shock and awe. Did Buck just do that? Press is toast, as the deputies hauled Press toward the door. He kicked and cursed, his empire of rants crumbling with every step. But the storm wasn't over. The real thunder was still to come. Before Press could reach the door, it burst open with a crash that rattled the tavern's rafters. A dozen figures stormed in, Asheville PD, badges flashing, guns drawn, led by Captain Amos Mac Dutton, a grizzled cop with a salt and pepper buzz cut and a scar snaking down his neck. The crowd froze, drinks clattering to the floor, as Mac's voice boomed over the chaos like a cannon shot. Preston Hargrove, you're under arrest. Multiple counts. Press's eyes bulged, his cuffed hands forgotten. Multiple counts? What the hell? This is crazy. Mac strode forward, cuffs glinting in his hand. Assault with a deadly weapon's just the start. We've got warrants. Fraud, extortion, blackmail tied to your little online racket. You're finished. The room erupted. Shouts, gasps, phones thrust high to capture the takedown. Press's crew scattered, Ron squirming under a deputy's knee, his bravado drowned in panic. Buck stepped back, hands in his pockets, as Mac yanked Press's arms tighter, the cuffs clicking shut. Press screamed, This is bullshit! I'm Preston Hargrove! You can't touch me! Mac grinned, a rare crack in his stony face. Tell it to the judge, hotshot. We've got you cold. But the real bombshell dropped like a thunderclap. As Press was dragged toward the door, kicking and cursing, Mac turned to Buck, holstering his gun. Good work, Callahan. You okay? Buck nodded, wiping a smear of bourbon off his sleeve. Been through worse, Mac. The crowd went silent, a collective gasp sucking the air out. Press twisted in the cuffs, glaring at Buck. What the hell? Who are you? Mac's grin widened, his scarred face lighting up. You don't know? Meet Wade Buck Callahan, retired Asheville PD legend. Took down half the drug rings in these mountains back in the day. Oh, and the guy who's been feeding us your dirty laundry for months. The tavern shook, a stunned hush giving way to a roar. Press's face drained of color, his swagger collapsing like a punctured tire. You, what? Buck stepped forward, his denim jacket catching the bar's dim light. Been watching you a while, Hargrove. Your silver influencer gig? It's a front. Fake sponsors, cooked numbers, threats to shut up anyone who talked. I handed Mac the whole damn file. Press's knees buckled, the cuffs clanking as he slumped. No, you're lying. Mac jerked him upright. Save it. We've got bank records, witnesses. Your old partner spilled everything. You're looking at 20 years. Easy. The crowd exploded. Shouts, cheers, some jeering as Press was hauled out, his screams fading down the street. Lee crossed her arms, smirking. Told you he picked the wrong fight. Buck picked up his glass, taking a slow sip, his calm unshaken. The room buzzed, phone still rolling, but he didn't flinch. Ron, cuffed on the floor, stared up at Buck, wide-eyed. You're a cop? Was, Buck corrected, voice low. Now I just clean up trash. The revelation hit like a lightning strike. Preston Hargrove, Asheville's loudmouth retiree star, undone not by a rival influencer, but by a retired cop in a faded jacket, a man he'd mocked as a nobody. The tavern trembled with the weight of it, murmurs turning to roars as the story spread beyond the wooden walls, poised to light up every screen and bar stool in town. The Blue Ridge Tavern was a war zone in the aftermath. Shattered glass glinting on the hardwood floor, overturned stools scattered like fallen dominoes, and the air thick with the buzz of stunned voices. Asheville PD hauled Preston Press Hargrove out in cuffs, his roars fading into the night as Captain Amos, Mac Gutton, barked orders to his team. Ron Tate slumped against the bar, cuffed and dazed, his phone confiscated as evidence of the live stream chaos. The crowd, retirees clutching phones, their faces a mix of shock and awe, stood frozen, caught in the wake of Buck Callahan's quiet takedown of a loudmouth titan. Buck stood near the bar, his faded denim jacket a stark contrast to the wreckage around him. He took a slow sip of his maker's mark, the glass steady in his scarred hands, his steel blue eyes scanning the scene with a weary calm. The chatter swelled, a blend of disbelief and admiration. Buck Callahan? The Buck Callahan? He took down Press. That's our guy. As the regulars, loggers, and mill hands in Carhartt jackets nodded with quiet pride. Sheriff Lila Lee Morrow stepped up beside him, her wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over her weathered face. She crossed her arms, a smirk tugging at her lips. You sure know how to stir the pot, Callahan. Buck shrugged, setting his glass down. Didn't stir nothing. Hargrove lit the match. Lee chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. Lit it and burned himself to ash. Dumb bastard didn't see you coming. Across the room, Travis, the bartender, hovered near the jukebox, sweeping glass with a broom, his burly frame tense. He'd tried to stop Press's rampage, but now his eyes darted between Buck and the chaos, a mix of guilt and respect in his tight nod. Deputies cleared out, dragging Press's posse with them, leaving the tavern in a strange limbo, half barroom, half legend in the making. A few retirees clapped Buck on the shoulder as they passed, murmuring, "Hell of a night, Buck," or "Knew you were something special." Others shuffled out, heads low, their earlier cheers for Prez now a bitter aftertaste. The bartender slid a fresh Maker's across the counter, unasked, nodding at Buck with a grin. "On me, man. Always figured you had more going on than you let on." Buck took it with a nod. No fuss, just a quiet, "Appreciate it." He wasn't here for the spotlight. He never had been. Lee leaned against the bar, watching the last stragglers file out. "Hargrove thought he owned this town," she said, voice low. "Guess he forgot Asheville don't bow to blowhards." Buck's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Ain't the town. It's the folks." She tilted her head, studying him. "You could have let him crash on his own. Why step up?" Buck's gaze drifted to the window, where the mountain shadows loomed under the night sky. "Seen too many like him hurt good people. Time he paid the tab." Lee nodded, a glint of respect in her sharp eyes. "Well, you rang it up good. Whole damn county's gonna know by sunup." And they did. By morning, the story was wildfire. News vans swarmed the Blue Ridge Tavern, choppers buzzing overhead, local stations replaying grainy phone footage of Press's arrest. Online, the buzz exploded. Posts about silver influencer gone rogue and retiree takedown spread like kudzu. Clips of Press's bourbon-soaked rant drowned out by Buck's quiet stand. The Asheville Citizen-Times ran a headline. "Retiree stars fall, ex-cop crushes fraudster." Channel 13 aired shaky videos, pundits dissecting every frame. Asheville wasn't just talking, it was shouting. Back in the tavern, as the last of the crowd trickled out, Travis approached Buck, his broom still in hand. "Mr. Callahan, I'm sorry. Didn't know who you were." Buck waved it off. "No sweat. You were doing your job." Travis swallowed, nodding. "Still, thanks for what you did." A deputy lingered near the door, tipping his hat to Buck. "Hell of a move, sir. Didn't mean no disrespect earlier." Buck's eyes crinkled, a rare hint of warmth. "Takes more than that to rattle me, son." They left, heads low, and Buck turned back to the bar. The town sprawled beyond the window, a patchwork of lights and legends, its heartbeat thumping through the mountain air. Prez Hargrove was gone, hauled off to face a reckoning years in the making. But Buck knew this wasn't the end. It was a ripple, a crack in the facade of bluster and arrogance that'd echo far beyond this night. A week later, the fallout hit like a landslide. Press's Silver Maverick empire collapsed. His online following tanked as fraud charges piled up, sponsors fleeing like deer from a shotgun blast. His mountain cabin went dark, his tricked-out RV impounded, his name erased from every Retiree fan page that had once cheered him. His former manager, a twitchy guy named Eddie Vance, spilled it all on a local news special. Fake ad deals, cooked donation numbers, threats to silence doubters. Press's racket wasn't just crumbling, it was dust. Meanwhile, Buck Callahan became a quiet icon. Old-timers at Asheville's diners swapped tales of his PD days, busting meth labs, saving lives, never taking a dime he didn't earn. Folks at the VFW hung his blurry photo on the wall, a denim-clad hero staring down the braggarts. Even the tavern staff started a tip jar labeled Buck's Brew, half joking they'd send it his way. He never showed up to claim it. One evening, Lee tracked Buck down at a roadside diner off Biltmore Avenue, its neon sign buzzing, "Open late." He sat in a corner booth, nursing a black coffee, a half-eaten plate of biscuits, and gravy cooling beside him. The place smelled of grease and nostalgia, vinyl seats cracked from years of use, jukebox crooning Patsy Cline, waitresses with tired smiles. Lee slid into the booth across from him, dropping a folded newspaper on the table. The headline blared, "Hargrove guilty, 25 years. "Thought you'd want to see this," she said, tapping the paper. Buck glanced at it, then back at his coffee. "Good." Lee raised an eyebrow. "That's it? Good? You took down a loudmouth fraud, Buck. Folks are calling you a legend." He shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Didn't do it for the noise." She leaned back, smirking. "Yeah, well, you got it anyway. Town's eating it up. Everybody's talking." Buck set his mug down, his scarred hands resting on the table. "They'll move on. Always do." Lee studied him, her tough shell softening. "You're a rare breed, Callahan. Always were." He met her gaze, a flicker of something, gratitude maybe, crossing his face. "Just a fella who's seen too much, Lee." Figured it was time to settle a score. The diner's jukebox shifted to a slow Johnny Cash tune, its mournful chords filling the quiet. Buck leaned back, his eyes drifting to the window where headlights streaked past in the Asheville night. Prez Hargrove had it all: followers, cash, a voice that boomed across screens, and he'd thrown it away chasing a hollow crown. Buck had none of that. No fancy rants, no mountain mansion, just a beat-up Ford and a lifetime of scars. Yet here he was, the last man standing, while Press rotted in a cell. That's the thing about respect. It's not a tally of likes or a fat bank account. It's forged in the choices you make, the way you treat the folks around you, the backbone you show when the world bets against you. Press thought his online clout made him untouchable, that he could bulldoze anyone quieter and call it strength. Buck proved him wrong, not with flash or fury, but with a steady grit that shook Asheville to its roots. True class isn't what you flaunt, it's who you are when the stakes are high. And in this mountain town, where every ridge hides a story and every bar stool holds a memory, that truth landed like a thunderbolt. For the retirees still griping about healthcare costs, it was a wake-up call. Your voice don't mean much if it's built on sand. For the barflies, the farmers, the old hands who'd watched Buck take down a braggart, it was a victory lap. A reminder that the little guy can still rise. And for Buck, it was just another day, another fight won, another wrong righted, another loudmouth taught that respect isn't handed out like candy. So here's the takeaway, folks. We're all one choice from showing our true colors. You can build a tower of noise, but if it's empty, it'll crash. Buck Callahan didn't need a million fans to stand tall. He had character, the kind no paycheck can buy. That's the lesson Press Hargrove learned the hard way, and it's one we'd all do well to carry. Respect ain't given, it's earned. Class ain't shouted, it's lived. Lee slid the paper closer, her voice cutting through Buck's silence. You're a story now, like it or not. People need to hear this. Buck grunted, a half smile tugging at his lips. Let him talk. But talk they did, and you should too. If Buck's Stand Against Bluster lit a spark in you, don't let it fade. Hit that subscribe button and join us at Lively Stories for more tales of grit, guts, and the kind of class that stands the test of time. Perfect for folks like us who've seen a thing or two. Tap the screen. There's a lineup of real-life heroes waiting to inspire you, from mountain legends to unsung champs. Share this with your buddies, your kin, anyone who needs a nudge that respect still counts. Drop a comment. Tell us your own tale of standing firm. Let's keep this flame alive, Asheville style.